Steve Spencer and his family are enthusiastic campers. Each year they head out to the remote backcountry of northeastern Idaho, but this vacation would prove to be unlike any other. The Spencer family would be forever changed. Spending time in the backcountry plays a vital role in Steve Spencer's life.
The outdoors and this country has been so important to me over the years growing up and finding my position, my place in it.
It was early April, and the Spencers were headed to Salmon River Canyon. They planned to hike 14 miles into the wilderness and set up camp for 7 days.
The Salmon River Canyon itself is an enchanting place. The hills are steep, and the canyon's narrow, and there's not much access.
Partway through the week, a jet boat would drop off food. It would return to pick them up at the end of their trip. Steve had no idea how important that boat would become. It was the third day of their trip when Steve and his two eldest boys, 14-year-old Micah and 12-year-old Zephan, went off exploring.
Decided to take a little hike, and me and my dad and my brother, we're gonna go look for elk antlers up a creek drainage.
Wendy, Steve's wife, and the two younger children stayed behind. Steve expected to be back by 8 p.m., but he would never see his campsite again. The trio was several miles into the wilderness when Steve suggested they separate.
Let's don't walk right together. There's always a chance of finding an elk antler. I said, I'm going to move a little higher, and you guys keep going at this angle. Why don't you just continue this way, and I'll meet you in a few minutes. You'll be able to see me most of the time, and then we'll come together over there.
Okay.
The boys hiked further up the trail, while Steve headed up a steep incline.
And so I walked up through them, and in a flash, my feet were out from underneath me.
Ah!
Steve was sliding fast on the slick rock.
There was a lot happening underneath me, like ball bearing effect, and the rock was sloped at such an angle I was picking up speed.
Frantically, he reached for a small bush, but the branch broke in his hands. His only chance at saving himself had disappeared.
It was the most extraordinary feeling to be reduced down to a helpless mass. I had never experienced that ever before, and I knew there was nothing I could do for myself.
Miles from civilization deep in the Idaho wilderness, Steve Spencer lies unconscious. Just moments earlier, he'd been enjoying an afternoon hike with his two sons. But with a slip of his foot, Steve's life took a disastrous turn.
Got it.
Steve's sons, Micah and Zephan, were further up the trail searching for elk antlers when something made them turn around.
We both turned and saw my dad slip off a rock and kind of give a screamish yell.
So we jumped up, dropped our bags, and went over to where we had last seen him.
Steve lay unconscious, blood seeping from his face.
I was scared that he might not be alive.
The boys prayed for their father to wake up.
The next thing I remember was waking up to the boys, one on each side of me, and a teary prayer. And it was a great comfort to know they're there with me.
Steve knew he was badly injured. He needed to get off the mountain immediately. But when his sons tried to move him, Steve knew he wasn't going anywhere.
And as soon as they helped me start to sit up, a peachy fluid issued out of my nose, almost like a bloody nose. Once they sat me up, a black tornado took off in my mind, in my head. Horrible thing, threatening to throw me into convulsive vomiting.
Steve had suffered a massive headache, worse than anything he could have imagined. He turned to his sons for help.
It was the most extraordinary feeling to be reduced down to a helpless mass.
He was slipping into shock. The boys had to take action.
I knew right then that someone would need to go help, and I thought it'd probably be me because my brother would be a lot better at taking care of him.
With no time to spare, Zephan took off.
I was just running as fast as I could down that hill.
Micah stayed to care for his father. He dragged him to a more comfortable location and then built a fire to keep him warm. But the race was now on for Steve's survival. Back at the campsite, his wife, Wendy, was in for a terrible shock.
And I heard somebody coming, and I thought, oh, they're here. And I looked up, and Zephan came walking towards me, And he just had the saddest look on his face.
Wendy listened, horrified, as her son described the accident. Immediately, she made plans to help her husband. She packed up sleeping bags and food and then put her younger children, Ember and Seth, to bed.
Now listen, you two. When I put them to bed, I told Ember that I probably wouldn't be there in the morning, but that someone would probably be there soon.
It was nighttime when Wendy and Zephan left their campsite. In the pitch dark, Wendy depended on her son to guide her through the treacherous mountains.
Micah! And we hiked and hiked and hiked till about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we came out onto a ridge, and I saw the fires. It was such a rush of emotion to see that they were there and that we had found them.
Wendy hurried to Steve's side. Nothing could have prepared her for his condition.
He had blood caked in his mustache, and he had a bloody spot on the side of his head.
Steve had broken an arm, an ankle, and his back, but it was the head trauma that caused the most concern.
My head hurt very greatly. It felt like thorns and broken glass embedded into the back of my head.
Wendy knew her husband's life was in peril. With no way to call for help, Steve's situation was desperate. Gathering her wits, she came up with a plan.
She said, okay, well, this is what we'll need to do. There's going to be a jet boat that's going to be dropping some food off, and we'll need to go down and we'll need to contact this jet boat, the owner of the jet boat, and have him radio for either a Forest Service chopper or a rescue chopper of some sort to come in and pick my dad up.
At sunrise, Zephan and Micah left their father's side. His life was now in their hands. They stopped at their campsite to gather their 2 younger siblings, then hiked another 3 miles to the river.
The jet boat was a little late and we were starting to get panicked. And when he got there finally, it was just relief.
The boat captain radioed for help, and the North Idaho Backcountry Medical Rescue Team went into action.
Yeah, we've had an accident down here on the Salmon River.
It was late afternoon when a helicopter dropped rescuers Nick Albers and Neil Johnson in the mountains near Steve. When they reached his side, they were distressed.
I guess our worst fears were proven. We had been told that he had head injuries, that he had a broken leg, maybe a broken arm, and so on.
Neil and Nick worked to stabilize their patient. Steve's injuries were so severe they couldn't risk moving him. They radioed for a different helicopter with hoist capabilities to fly in and pick him up.
We're going to need that Air Force ship to come in.
But darkness was fast approaching, and rescuers worried that Steve would be forced to spend a second night out on the mountainside.
I could tell that they were anxious and nervous and concerned.
But after lying near death for almost 2 days, luck was finally on Steve's side.
I heard that big thump, 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 thump in the canyon, and I think everybody breathed an incredible sigh of relief.
A military helicopter hoisted Steve up in a litter and flew him to an emergency room in Missoula, Montana. His list of injuries was frightening. Steve had 2 broken vertebrae, a broken ankle, and arm. But most life-threatening was a tear in the lining of Steve's brain. The strange liquid leaking from his nose was cerebral spinal fluid. Steve endured many surgeries to repair his body. After 3 weeks in the hospital, he was released, but he continued to wear a body brace and underwent extensive physical therapy for another 3 months.
I feel I'm nearing full recovery.
Today, Steve and Wendy couldn't be more proud of their children.
When I think of what the boys did for their dad, they saved his life.
Well, I had great confidence in my son's ability to keep me alive. I never doubted it for a moment.
Steve and his family also had a chance to reunite with the North Idaho Rescue Team, the other half of this amazing survival story.
I owe them so much.
Thank you.
And without them and what they did, this story couldn't have been told.
The Spencer family displayed remarkable courage in their efforts to save Steve. And while they did everything right, this story shows that it is impossible to be over-prepared in the wilderness. Here are some things you can do to keep you safe when camping. Before heading out, review your first aid skills. Take a CPR, basic first aid refresher course. Plan on taking a hiking staff or cane on rocky terrain. It serves as a third leg for better balance. If you suspect someone has a head injury, don't let them fall asleep. carry a lightweight survival kit, even on day trips. I'm Corbin Burnson. Thanks for watching Wild Survival. Enjoy, and be safe in the wild.